When you're standing in front of a wall of speakers, a new AV receiver can feel like the biggest gamble in a home theater build. You worry whether it'll actually drive the room the way you picture it, if the HDMI bandwidth will keep up with your 8K TV, and whether the extra features will end up as nice-to-have or as clutter you never touch. That hesitation is real, and it's why I'm going to walk through the Marantz Cinema 60 the way you'd want to hear it, what it does in a lived-in setup, where it saves you money, and where it might still leave you reaching for the manual. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the Cinema 60 is positioned as a mid-range 7.2-channel receiver that promises 8K video pass-through and full object-based audio like Dolby Atmos and DTS-X. On paper that looks like a perfect match for anyone upgrading from a 4Conley box, but the real test is how those specs translate when you actually press play on a Blu-ray or fire up a console. Installation is where the first practical strengths show up. The rear panel has 8 HDMI inputs and 1 HDMI output, all of them supporting 4K per 120 Hz and 8K per 60 Hz pass-through. For a typical 2025 living room, that means you can hook a next-gen console, a 4K Blu-ray player, a streaming stick, and even a cable box without worrying about having to swap cables later. I found the HDMI labeling clear, and the ports are spaced far enough apart to avoid a crowded back panel, something that many cheaper receivers overlook. The only hidden trade-off is that you lose a full 8-capable HDMI input for the subwoofer pre-out, because the sub-out is on an RCA connector rather than an HDMI ARC channel. If you plan on using an HDMI RC subwoofer or a soundbar that expects ARC, you'll need an extra adapter or a different setup. Power handling is another area where the Cinema 60 feels comfortable. Each channel is rated at 100 WRMS/8, which is plenty for most medium-sized rooms. In my 18 square meter home theater, the front left and right drivers hit solid, clean highs without any audible compression, even during the most dynamic action sequences in a recent superhero movie. The bass from the dedicated subwoofer channel was deep enough to feel the rumble of explosions, but the receiver didn't try to overdrive the sub, which can sometimes cause distortion on lower-priced models. The practical upside here is that you can run 2 pairs of surround speakers and a sub without needing an external amp. What really separates Marantz in this price bracket is the integration of HEOS multi-room streaming. The built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth let you pull music from Spotify, Apple Music, or even a local library and push it to any HEOS-enabled speaker in the house. I set up a kitchen speaker and a bedroom bookshelf speaker in under 5 minutes, using the Marantz app. The transition between TV audio and music is seamless. When I pause a movie, the same remote control instantly switches to the kitchen speaker, and the volume levels stay consistent thanks to the automatic gain compensation. For anyone who wants a single hub that does both home theater and whole house audio, that convenience is worth a chunk of the price. Voice control works, too, via Amazon Alexa, Google Assistant, or Apple Siri. I tried a few commands: "Hey Alexa, turn the volume up 10%, and "Hey Google, switch to HDMI 3. The receiver responded within a second, and the actions were accurate. The catch is that you have to enable the skill and link the account, which adds a couple of steps the less tech-savvy might find annoying. Once set up though, it's genuinely hands-free, which is a nice bonus for people who use the system for gaming and don't want to juggle a remote mid-play. Now, let's talk about where the Cinema 60 might not be the right fit. If you're a true audiophile looking for absolute precision in a dedicated music system, you might notice that the built-in DAC, while solid, isn't on the same level as Marantz's high-end reference models. The HDAM, hybrid digital/analog matrix, circuitry is a step up from the average chipset, but it doesn't match the sonic clarity you'd get from a dedicated network streamer paired with a separate DAC. In other words, it's a great all-in-one for movies and casual listening, but for critical listening you may eventually want a separate component. Another consideration is future-proofing for 8K. While the receiver can pass an 8K signal to your TV, it doesn't upscale lower-resolution content to 8K, nor does it support HDR10+ at the same level of brightness as some flagship models. If your primary driver for buying a new AVR is the promise of future-ready 8K gaming, you'll still be limited by your TV's capabilities and by the fact that most current games don't output 8K. That said, the HDMI bandwidth is there, so you won't need to replace the receiver when 8K content finally becomes common. One practical weakness that shows up after a few weeks is the on-screen menu navigation. Marantz's UI is clean.